Talk all we want about values. Values are important. But you can't shoot values. You can't shoot flags, and you can't shoot strong speeches.
You can't, like, shoot with them? Or you can't shoot at them? You can't shoot... Are we sure he's not talking about, like, shots? You know what I mean? U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth at a meeting of the NATO defense ministers this week. I think that was supposed to sound tough, came off a little more like something your least favorite uncle posts on Facebook next to a picture of an assault rifle and like 9 empty beer cans. But Secretary Hegseth began this trip by bewildering not just our allies, but also a lot of people in Washington when he inexplicably blurted out that any peace deal in the Russia-Ukraine war would have to include Ukraine giving up its territory and abandoning its bid to join NATO. That would imply that the peace talks have already happened and Ukraine already had to give everything up. Why would they talk? We mentioned last night that Secretary Hegseth has now tried to walk those comments back, but I think it is worth you hearing exactly how he started his remarks when he was trying to take back what he said the other day.
As it pertains to NATO membership not being realistic outcome for negotiations, that's something that was stated as part of my remarks here, as part of a coordination with how we're executing these ongoing negotiations.
That was, can you say that again? Can we diagram that sentence? That's something that was stated as part of my remarks. It's like he asked ChatGPT to come up with the most passive voice way to say, you know what, I need to take back that dumb thing I said. It's not just our allies abroad who reacted negatively to Pete Hegseth's comments. After Hegseth made those comments, the Republican chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Senator Roger Wicker, responded by saying, quote, "I'd prefer we don't give away negotiating positions before we actually get started." After Hegseth then tried to take it back, walk back what he'd said and say he didn't really mean it, Senator Wicker then responded again, saying, quote, "He made a rookie mistake. I don't know who wrote the speech. It's the kind of thing Tucker Carlson could have written. And, quote, Carlson is a fool," said the senator. Again, that is a member of Pete Hegseth's own political party boldly criticizing his performance on this trip. It's worth noting, as Senator Wicker was making that unfavorable comparison to Mr. Carlson himself was posting a new interview with Hungary's authoritarian leader, Viktor Orban, an interview where, as Politico puts it, quote, "Orban repeated Kremlin talking points that Russia invaded Ukraine in a bid to stop it from joining NATO." Because, yes, Russia was on the ropes. They were the real victim here. They just had to invade. Meanwhile, today, Ukraine accused Russia's military of ramming a drone with a high explosive warhead on it into the former Chernobyl nuclear site. The drone reportedly damaged the protective shield that is supposed to prevent radiation leaks from that famously radioactive site. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the damage was significant, but he says there are not currently signs of increased radiation. Amid all of this, the Vice President of the United States managed to make things even more confusing, making his own sort of rookie moves on his own first trip abroad. He told the Wall Street Journal that the U.S. would potentially take military action in the war in Ukraine. As in U.S. troops in Ukraine? Everybody in this administration seems to be taking the approach that they should just say whatever pops into their head and try cleaning it up later. Vice President Vance said that the Wall Street Journal had twisted his words. The Wall Street Journal does not appear to have conceded they've done any such thing. Joining us now from Munich, Germany, is former ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul, who has stayed up till dark 30 to be with us tonight in the middle of the night. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure to be on with you, Rachel.
These remarks from Pete Hegseth at the outset here speaking with NATO leaders were obviously not just damaging, but embarrassing, and he then tried to take them back. We're in sort of a different situation with remarks that have since been made there by Vice President Vance. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about Vice President Vance's speech there and how it was received.
Well, first, it was just a rookie mistake is very generous. I've negotiated with the Russians before. They're tough negotiators. And you don't just capitulate and give them what they want before you start the negotiations. And the vice president could have clarified things today at the Munich Security Conference. He could have devoted his speech to saying what the United States position is, what the Trump administration official position is to try to clean it up. But instead, he gave a speech about how democracy is failing in Europe. He said that that was a bigger threat to Europe than Russia or China. And he said that in a room filled with generals and admirals and Ukrainian soldiers. And again, I don't need to tell you, Rachel, the irony of the vice president of the United States who works for President Trump telling the Europeans that they're doing a bad job at democracy, given what we are going through right now and given what we went through 4 years ago, really was quite insulting for this audience. So it was a great opportunity to say clearly what their position was, and instead he chose to lecture them about democracy.
I also understand that Vice President Vance made the decision in Germany at this meeting to not meet with the German chancellor and instead to meet with the leaders of Germany's far-right party, AfD, which is viewed by many Germans as the sort of unsettling inheritors of the legacy of the Nazi Party, frankly. What do you make of this decision? Is this a logistics decision or is this a loud message? And if so, how is it being heard?
Definitely not a logistics decision problem. Anybody that the vice president wanted to meet with, he could. But it underscores the other message of his speech. His speech was basically adopt our interpretation of values, right? MAGA values. And again, these guys, there's a big contradiction. They talk about sovereignty all the time, but when it comes to German sovereignty, they're perfectly willing to get involved. There's elections here in just a few days here in Germany. And it was not well received. I've been to this conference many, many times. I cannot recall a speech that so many people were so insulted by.
Mike, the news out of Ukraine today, this video that we've seen of this drone with what appears to be a high explosive warhead on it smashing into the containment dome, the sort of sarcophagus that covers the highly radioactive Chernobyl nuclear disaster site. Those images are so chilling and so unsettling. Can I just ask your reaction to that? Ukraine claims this is a Russian military drone. Russia is essentially disclaiming responsibility for it. How are you viewing this?
Well, Rich, I spent most of my day today with Ukrainians, including soldiers. They're fighting, and they fought courageously for 3 years. But when they hear our president say that he trusts Vladimir Putin and that he's going to do a deal with Vladimir Putin and then present it to the Ukrainian people, and they experience what you were just showing your viewers, there's a lot of dissonance there. They don't trust Putin. Putin is their enemy, and it makes them very nervous when the president of the United States, who they need and rely on to continue to fight against the Russians, are saying he trusts Putin.
Former ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul, joining us tonight live from Munich, where it is 3:30 in the morning. Ambassador McFaul, I now owe you at some point. You can wake me up at 3:30 in the morning for something. I owe you at least a beer when you get back. Thank you very much for being up at this time for us. Thank you.